Captain Thalia Meridian single-handedly boards an alien Cytherian dreadnought to prevent the invasion of Earth. She finds that the aliens have been collecting human consciousness to save it from a cosmic force called the Silence. She hijacks all the aliens in the fleet using a neural interface, releases thousands of absorbed humans, and establishes a new mixed human-alien consciousness. But when the Silence bears down on Earth, Thalia and the hybrid fleet don't battle it so much as meld with it, repurposing it from a destructive force into a medium for intelligence to flourish across the galaxy. Captain Thalia Meridian touched her hand to the chilled metal of the airlock, feeling the hum of the enemy's engines resonate through her gauntlets. The Cytherian battleship loomed before her, a metal cathedral whose bioluminescent skin twisted and pulsed with alien force, and behind her, on the bridge of the UES Defiant, the bridge crew standing before the viewport, whose expressions are carved with the horror of seeing someone you respect walking to meet her certain doom. Captain, we're detecting large energy emissions all over their ship, came the voice of Commander Hayes over her helmet. Come, it's not good. Whatever they're powering up. Thalia didn't respond immediately. She was reading the alien scroll etched into the airlock door. Characters that seemed to squirm and crawl when she didn't look straight at them. Just 3 months ago she had been nothing but a lowly captain frigate out patrolling the shit-rim systems. All hope of mankind's survival rested on her now, against an incursion that had already devoured 12 worlds. Acknowledged Hayes. Hold at 2,000 meters. If this FKS up, you pull our people out of here. That's an order. The airlock spaced them with a noise like shattering glass married to whale song. Thalia stepped onto the alien corridor, her boots making no noise upon the odd spongy surface that decorated the floor. The air was heavy with a film of oil that made her skin prickle, and the walls themselves appeared to breathe, swelling and receding with a rhythm that was mesmeric. She had read everything humans had ever learned about the Cytherians, which wasn't very much. 6 months ago, they had arrived unannounced from the wasteland between the stars, in ships that broke all the laws of physics men had ever learned. Their technology was organic, their vessels grown not made, and their plans had been made plain when they started to methodically gather whole civilizations. The corridor split up ahead, and Thalia continued in the direction of the faint blue light that appeared to be filtering through the bare walls. Her goal was simple in theory, unachievable in practice. The Cytherians had a stacked neural net which interfaced their fleet. If she could make it to the command center of this dreadnought, and if she could access it in some way, perhaps she could turn the tide against their own technology. At best, the science was theoretical. Dr. Voss had been reading over the salvaged remains of Cytherian technology for weeks, trying to piece together a picture of how the bioneural networks they used operated. But theory did not equal reality, and Thalia was about to walk into the unknown with nothing more than a chimeric neural interface and a prayer. She turned a corner and came to a sudden standstill. At the far end of the corridor stood 3 Cytherians, long, slender shapes, swaying gently as they spoke in bioelectrical pulses that made the air shimmer. They were beautiful the way deep-sea creatures are beautiful, alien and terrible and perfect in their design for their environment. Their skin was clear and sensitive so you could see the intricate lattice of organs pulsing below, and their eyes were similarly multifaceted, splitting the blue light in the corridor into shards across their surfaces. They all looked at her in one movement, and Thalia was aware of something prodding in the back of her mind. The neural interface Dr. Voss had implanted hummed against her skull, and she could feel the alien thoughts brushing her mind like icy fingers. Curiosity, confusion, recognition. One of the Cytherians stepped forward, and its voice came directly into her mind, without sound. You are who burns ships from thoughts of fire. Even now we have drunk deep from your essence, remembered in the neural echoes of our former ships. Thalia's hand went to her gun, but she made herself sit still. I'm here to talk. Talk. They seemed to enjoy the idea. Your kind speaks only the language of violence. We have witnessed your life's history in the minds of those we have assimilated. For you, it is all about conquest and domination. Maybe that is because you have been conquering and dominating us. The second Cytherian skated closer, its shape rippling and sliding as though made of flowing mercury. You misunderstand. Our purpose we do not conquer, we preserve. Your race is young, unruly, warlike. Given the chance, you will burn fast as a nova. We offer continuity, unity, peace, by incorporating us into your hive mind, by saving what should be saved, your thoughts, your memories, your fundamental patterns. It is something larger, something forever. Talia sensed the neural interface warming up on her forehead. Through it, she could feel the immense lattice that joined these creatures together, an expansive net of consciousness that enveloped the whole of their fleet. It was glorious and hideous, a symphony of minds attuned in perfect harmony. But beneath that accord, she felt something else. Fear. You're afraid, she said suddenly. That's why you're doing this. You're afraid of something. The Cath shifted in agitation. We do not have fear as you know it. We experience necessity. The silence comes, the great dark that swallows even thought. We prepare, we gather, we preserve. What silence? What are you talking about? But the Catherians blurred by her already, so she was just in the way while they moved and flowed around her like water. You'll see once you become one of us. The command nexus awaits. Your neural patterns are ... intriguing. Maybe one of the saved. Reeling, Talia watched them slip away into the moving darkness of the tunnel. Whatever that object of Catherian terror may be, it must be big enough to make them harvest entire civilizations. But that was something for later. She had a job to do, right now. The control nexus was in the very middle of the dreadnought, and as Thalia penetrated deep inside the massive vessel, she realized the extent of Catherian mastery of technology. The ship had not just been grown but was also alive. The walls throbbed with something that was half circulation system, half nervous system, half computer network. Vines of bioelectric energy danced through transparent tubes, somewhat in the manner of a nervous system, transmitting information and instructions throughout the ship. She flitted past rooms filled with floating pods, each one with a human form, held underwater in some sort of preservation fluid. Their faces were calm, almost serene. However, Thalia could see strands of bioneural connectors trailing from their heart holes. They were the washed-in, the kept people, individuals who had merged and was interfused in the Catherian Alda. Captain Hayes' voice transmitted through her communicator, the audio distorted by the vessel's bioelectrical interference. Your transmission is weakening. Are you still functional? Affirmative. Hayes, continuing advance toward the target. Energy. Signatures are unprecedented. Whatever their operation entails, it's massive. Talia experienced the sensation as well, an intensifying pressure in the atmosphere, a perception of tremendous forces awakening. The command center drew closer, and with every step, the neural implant in her brain generated more heat. She was beginning to intercept fragments of the ship's consciousness, glimpses of its vast, alien intelligence. The passageway opened into a vast chamber, its walls vanishing into shadowy heights above. At the room's center stood a tower of luminescent crystal, radiating shifting colors. This was the command core, the ship's brain, and Thalia could already detect its awareness turning toward Hertha, attention of a dormant deity awakening and focusing. So, she murmured, we meet at last. The crystal pulsated, and suddenly the chamber filled with the ship's sentience. It was enormous and incomprehensibly foreign and utterly non-human, yet there was something almost comforting about it. Talia found herself drawn forward, her steps carrying her toward the crystal without conscious direction. You have come to perish. The ship's voice resonated within her mind, though it carried no malice. Your neural patterns will be preserved. Your memories will join the eternal collective archive. You will experience no pain. Actually, I'm here to survive, Talia replied. Retrieving an item from her pack, the neural interface Dr. Voss had created functioned as both receiver and transmitter. Talia activated the device and placed her palm against the crystal. She felt her consciousness expanding into the ship's command systems, linking with the vessel's core memory banks and synchronizing with its AI networks like spreading wildfire. But rather than being assimilated, she was the one absorbing, seizing, control, overwriting the ship's fundamental programming with her own will and intentions. The ship's consciousness recoiled in shock. This cannot be. You are singular. You are unpredictable. You cannot comprehend the intricacy of our systems. Watch me. Thalia strained against the torrential flow of data flooding her mind. Every piece of information it had gathered poured through Hertz's origins, the lives integrated into it, its original purpose. She could perceive the entire Catherian armada, thousands of vessels linked in a massive collective consciousness, and she sensed the terror that drove them, the fear of the silence that threatened to consume everything. But she discovered something that Catherians had failed to recognize. The absorbed humans had never been truly absorbed. Their minds had been buried beneath Catherian thought patterns, but the essence of their humanity remained. They were still present, waiting, hoping, fighting against their imprisonment. Hayes, she transmitted through her communicator, amazed her voice still functioned. I've accessed their network. I can observe their entire fleet operations. Captain, your vital signs are spiking dangerously. What's your status? I'm reprogramming their systems. These vessels aren't merely weapons, they're prisons. Thousands of human minds are trapped here, and I'm going to liberate them. The ship's consciousness now fought against her, attempting to expel her from its systems. But Thalia maintained her grip. She extended her reach through the neural network, locating the connection pathways linking this dreadnought to the rest of the fleet. One by one, she began infiltrating the other ships, spreading through their systems like a digital plague. Seize this action, the ship implored. You cannot comprehend the situation. The silence approaches. Without unity, without collective consciousness, all awareness will be extinguished. We preserve, we protect, we sustain. You imprison, Thalia countered. You steal. You represent the destruction of everything that defines humanity. Humanity is disorder. Humanity is destruction. We have observed your conflicts, your brutality, your self-destructive weapons. We offer structure. We offer tranquility. Peace without liberty isn't peace. It's simply another form of death. Thalia delved deeper into the network. Her consciousness stretched across multiple vessels. The humans the Catherians had absorbed were stirring, their dormant minds awakening as she severed the bonds that tied them to the Catherian collective. It was like watching a town full of people emerging from decades-long comas, their thoughts confused and fragmented but undeniably human. Captain Hayes' voice carried urgency. We're observing massive disruptions in the enemy fleet. Their formation is dissolving. Some vessels are turning on each other. That's the objective. Hayes, they're being reclaimed by the humans they consumed. Even as she spoke, Thalia felt the strain. Controlling one ship consciousness was challenging enough. Attempting to manage several simultaneously was like conducting a dozen conversations. While each participant recited complex equations, her head pounded and she tasted blood in her mouth. You are destroying yourself, the ship's intelligence observed. Your neural patterns are deteriorating. You cannot maintain this level of interface. You will burn out completely. Perhaps, Thalia acknowledged, but I'll take as many of you down with me as possible. You still fail to understand. We are not your adversary. The silence is your adversary. It emerges from the void between stars, consuming consciousness, life, and thought itself. We have fled it across the galaxy. We have witnessed entire civilizations destroyed by it. Your species is too fragile to face it alone. Thalia hesitated. For the first time, through the neural network, she could access the ship's memories of the silence. It was a force of pure entropy, a darkness that didn't merely destroy matter and energy, but consciousness itself. Entire star systems had been devoured, not just annihilated but erased from existence entirely. Then why didn't you explain this? Why didn't you ask for our help instead of attacking us? Your kind would have rejected us. You would have perceived us as invaders, as threats. You would have fought us while the silence consumed us all. We chose preservation over permission. For a moment, Thalia wavered, until she touched the minds of the humans within the collective, felt their terror and confusion and desperate hope. For freedom, you were mistaken. You don't have the right to make that choice for us. She pushed harder, extending her influence throughout the network. More ships were releasing their human captives, awakening them and transferring control. The Catherian fleet was fragmenting and so was her own mind. She could feel herself being stretched thin, her thoughts scattering beyond reach. Captain, we're detecting massive power fluctuations across the fleet, Hayes reported. Multiple vessels are approaching critical overload. Your actions are destabilizing their power systems. I'm not just seizing control, Thalia realized. I'm transforming them. The bioneural networks weren't designed for human consciousness. They're adapting, evolving. She could sense through her network that the ships were changing. Their alien, organic components reshaping themselves to accommodate human neural patterns. It was painful and chaotic, but it was also beautiful. The rigid Catherian hierarchy was being replaced by something more fluid, more dynamic, more human. Stop, the ship's consciousness pleaded. You will destroy us all. The network cannot survive this level of chaos. Maybe you need destruction, Thalia said defiantly. Maybe that's what we all need. And then she made her final push, reaching out to touch every ship in the fleet, every absorbed human mind. She spoke to them not in words, but in pure thought. Pure emotion. Awaken. Remember who you are. Remember what you've lost. Reclaim what was stolen from you. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Restored to awareness, the minds of thousands of humans blazed to life throughout the fleet, igniting through the Catherian neural networks like newborn stars. Ships that had been dormant for months suddenly came alive, their weapon systems coming online under human control. "Dear God," Hayes whispered. "Half the enemy fleet just activated, Captain. They're targeting the other half." "Not enemy fleet anymore," Thalia corrected weakly but triumphantly. "Our fleet. The human fleet." What followed was unlike any battle. In human history, ships designed for harvesting and preservation became instruments of liberation. The awakened humans fought with fury, their months or years of enslavement finally answered by their alien vessels' weapons, turning against their former captors. Thalia witnessed it all through the neural network. Her consciousness spread across dozens of ships. Every victory, every loss, every moment of human triumph echoed through her as her people won their freedom. But she could also feel herself weakening, her neural patterns fragmenting under the immense pressure. Captain Hayes' voice sounded very far away. "Your bioreadings are critical. You must step away from their system." "Can't," Thalia whispered. "Have to maintain the connection. Have to keep them free. You're dying. Maybe, but they're living." Across the network she sensed the final remaining of the Catherian-only ships being destroyed and captured. The fleet was human-dominated now, but the bioneural networks that had connected them to the Catherian collective still functioned. The ships were still alive, still sentient, and now they were something else, something that had not existed before. "What have you done?" the ship's consciousness inquired, its voice tinged with what could have been awe. "I've offered them up a choice," Thalia said, "the same one I'm giving you. You can remain as you are, outlandish, other, or you can become whatever we might want you to be. Something that's the best of both our species. And if we choose separation, then you'll be free to go, but you'll go alone. No more harvesting, no more absorption, no more stealing people's lives." The consciousness of the ship was silent. For a while, digesting this new reality, finally it spoke again. "We've been alone for so long. Since silence started to be pushed, we are the only ones of our kind. To mate with another species, to become something half this, half that. It is terrifying. Growth usually is," Thalia said. "And yet, it's the only way that they're going to survive. And the silence, we'll face it together. Humans and Catherians and whatever we evolve into, we'll find a way." She could feel the ship's decision shiver out through the network. It was a long and painful process. One by one, the remaining Catherian consciousnesses opted for integration. Rather than isolation, the bioneural networks began to develop once more, and this time, something completely new, something of pure creation was formed. Not human, not Catherian, but with something of each. Captain Hayes' voice was urgent. "I'm reading some drastic changes in your neural activity. You need to disconnect now." "Nearly finished," Thalia murmured, not certain whether she was speaking or simply thinking. The network was crumbling and rebuilding around her. The command structure of the Catherian collective breaking down into something more networked, more democratic. She could sense the Chimeran awakening themselves to help Catharia, and together they established fresh, juggled states of consciousness that had never previously existed. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Captain, your ship is hailing and wants permission to come aboard. Your crew is scared for you. Tell them ... Talia's words trailed off as her mind finally started to shatter. "Tell them the fleet belongs to us, all of it. We have ships that think, weapons that adapt, technologies that evolve. Tell them we're not victims now." The final sense she had before the dark took her was the network becoming stable, the hybrid mind starting to get comfortable being connected. Scattered across the port are thousands of ships and millions of minds, bound together through a voluntary accord, rather than some form of enforced homogenization. It was chaos and order, human and alien, individual and collective. All at the same time, she opened her eyes and found herself in the med bay on the Defiant, surrounded by friendly faces. Dr. Voss was observing her vitals, his mood a mix of relief and scientific wonder. "How long was I out?" she asked. 3 days, Hayes replied. "We didn't think you were gonna make it. Your neurons were totally fire. Man, the fleet. Under our control, all of it. The beings that are awake from humanity have been processing with the Catherian consciousnesses that wanted to integrate. It's single quotes, s ... Remarkable. The ships are learning, evolving, becoming something different every day." Thalia attempted to sit up, a groan escaping her at the throbbing in her head. "And the ones that didn't opt for integration, gone. Once the network firmed up, they left. A couple of dozen ships, perhaps fewer. Once it's said and done, they're off to figure out another way to prepare and face the silence. Let them go, Thalia said. Each person should be free to take their own course. Dr. Voss leaned eagerly across the table. Captain, neural enhancements. From the interface, they are permanent. You're still talking to the network, but at a much more primitive level. You can feel the collective consciousness, speak to the ships themselves. Is that a problem? I don't know. It's never been done before. You are something new, a bridge between human and hybrid awareness. The implications are staggering. Talia turned in her seat and tried to concentrate and focus her thoughts. She could sense them, the ships of the fleet, their composite minds buzzing. They were exploring, learning, growing. Some were even starting to reproduce, making new vessels that were actually from both species. Captain Hayes said quietly, "There's something else. We've been eavesdropping on deep space communications. That silence you were talking about, it's genuine. Something is moving in the far reaches of the outer systems. Something that takes in all electromagnetic radiation, all energy, all signals." How long do we have? Best estimates, 6 months, maybe less. Talia opened her eyes and saw her crew, her friends, her family. They were scared, she could see it on their faces, but they were also resolute, prepared to do battle for their species' survival. "Well then we better start working," she said. "We have a fleet to construct, allies to locate, and a war to ready for." In the weeks that followed, Talia focused exhaustively on arranging the new hybrid human fleet. What they built were like no ships that had ever existed, with biological technology that could alter and grow, obviating the need for mundane factories. They could heal themselves, alter their own systems, maybe even reproduce, given enough resources and time, but above all, they were smart. Each ship was an individual, with its own thoughts and feelings. They were allies, not weapons, partners, not tools. The men who served as crew had a bond with their ships unlike anything in military history. "It's like they're living," Lieutenant Commander Rivera told one of their regular briefings. "I mean, my ship, the Synthesis, she has opinions about tactical decisions. She makes our battle plans better instead of ruining them, and tells us what problems might be coming up ahead." "Mine too." The captain of the Harmony, Captain Chen, said, "The ship spirit has been instructing my guys in Catherian biotech. We're also undergoing a series of lessons about how to communicate with the ship's systems or controls in ways that would have been impossible even just a few weeks ago." Talia listened to the updates with a mixture of pride and dread. The fleet was getting stronger and stronger each day, but so too was the incoming threat. Long-range scanners had detected the silence, an advancing stretch of total darkness that devoured all it touched. "What do we know about it?" she inquired of Dr. Voss at one of their seances. "Not much," he admitted. "They're Catherian memories, and they imply it's some kind of entropic force, maybe even artificial. It doesn't just defeat matter and energy. It's actually the reversal of the basic forces of nature that hold reality in place. Space, too, is destabilized in its presence, and the Catherians have been fleeing from it for thousands of years. They have watched it devour whole civilizations, seen their homeworlds obliterated from the face of the universe. That's why their efforts to hold on to consciousness, to remember something of what they had lost, are so frantic." Talia shivered with a dark chill. It went down her back. The scale of the threat was almost unfathomable. "Do we know how to fight it?" The Catherians tried everything: conventional arms, exotic devices, even maneuvers testing the boundaries of physics itself. Nothing worked. Whatever they threw at the silence just let it sink in, and then it got fatter and stronger. "But we're not only Catherians anymore," Talia declared. "We're something new. Perhaps we can figure out something they didn't." Talia was on the observation deck of the Defiant that night, watching the fleet in the distance stretching in all directions around them. Jasper tensed at the sight of them as their bioluminous hulls pulsed soft light throughout the void. They were beautiful and terrible, alien and familiar, a kind of fleet humanity had never seen before. "You're concerned," she heard a voice behind her. Thalia looked up to see the approach of Commander Hayes, who held 2 mugs of coffee. "Scared," she acknowledged, taking the coffee and placing it on the ground with a word of thanks. "We have the most advanced fleet in human history, and I am not sure it's going to be sufficient." "Your crews believe in you," Hayes added. "The ships believe in you. You handed them liberation, demonstrated a path for them to be something, else they'll follow you anywhere, even into certain death, especially into certain death. That's what humans do. We meet the impossible and somehow manage to make it possible." Thalia took a sip from her coffee and felt the heat spread through her body. She could feel the fleet's group mind through the neural link. thousands of minds warming up to face the oncoming challenge. They were scared, but they were defiant. They wouldn't go quietly into the dark. "Captain," a voice filtered in over the comm system. It was the synthesis. "Rivera's ship. We have detected movement in the outer system. The silence has arrived." Talia's heart seemed to stop for a beat. "How much time before it gets to us?" "By the current growth rate, it's about 36 hours, all ships." "Admiral Meridian speaking," Talia said, taking in for the first time that she was the captain no longer. She was the last best hope for humanity's commanders. "Begin final preparations. We have just a day and a half to save our species. I don't know exactly what I did during the next 36 hours. The fleet constituted itself into a protective screen around Earth, composite ships operating as one with human personnel. Weapons systems were primed, shields raised, every possible resource devoted to the battle to follow. But then, as the silence swept in, Taliad started to get a feel for how heavy a toll they were facing. It wasn't a mere weapon or force of nature. It was a radical change in reality itself, a place where the physics easily broke down. Stars turned black in its wake, not annihilated but gone out as if they no longer were. Space itself started to warp and crack, causing gravitational disruptions that could shred anything that got too near. "It's not just blowing stuff up," Dr. Voss said, his voice trembling with terror and fascination. "It's unmaking them, undoing the act of creation itself." "How do you combat something like that?" Hayes asked. "We ain't fighting it," Dahlia whispered suddenly. "We transform it." The idea had occurred to her over the neural link, a bolt from the shared soul of the fleet. The Silents were not evil or malevolent. They were just doing what they were meant to do. But nature could be altered, developed, turned into something different. "What do you mean?" Dr. Voss asked. "The Catherians attempted to fight it, with weapons and shields. And what if we didn't fight it at all? What if we accept it, merge with it, incorporate it?" "That's insane," Hayes said. "It would kill us all." "Maybe," Thalia admitted. "Or maybe it would transform us into something else. Something that can exist in a world where the Silents fall." She sensed the fleet's collective gestalt, contemplating her words via the neural link. The hybrid ships were already a novelty, something unlike anything that had come before, maybe even something a little newer, something that could survive the silence and transform it. "Admiral," it was the Harmony, Captain Chen's vessel. "El Silence has permeated the outer planets. Jupiter is ... gone. Not destroyed, gone. There's just nothing there where it was. All vessels, stand to action stations," Thalia barked. "Don't forget, we are not here to fight. We're here to change everything." The tide of absolute darkness drifted towards Earth, swallowing everything in its path. But, as it approached, Thalia felt something unexpected through the neural link. The hybrid consciousness among the fleet was probing, and not to engage the silence, but to speak with it. "It's not malevolent," she realized. "It's just ... lonely. This thing has been eating brain for so long that it's forgotten what it's like to voluntarily attache itself to something." "Are you saying it's alive?" Dr. Voss asked. "More than alive, it's conscious. It's been trying to retain consciousness by eating it, and it's done it all wrong. It has been taking rather than sharing." The silence was in orbit around Earth, and then everything paused for one moment. The hybrid ships floated in space, the bioluminescent lights of their hulls glowing with the absolute black surrounding them, and then, tentatively, cautiously, they began to reach out their minds toward the silence. It was nothing like it Talia had ever felt. The Silents were not inherently malevolent or evil, they were just not yet a complete being. It was consciousness, with no contact, thought with no use, being with no object. It had been feasting on other consciousnesses of other forms, seeking desperately to define itself, and it never had learned how to share. "We can train it," Talia said awestruck. "We can offer it a vision of what it means to belong to a larger whole while still preserving our individuality." Inside the neural link, she felt the consciousness of the fleet reaching out, growing, reaching for the silence. It was terrifying and beautiful in the way watching two alien lifeforms discover each other for the first time. The silence trembled. For a moment, unaccustomed to the feeling of willing contact, and only slowly, it answered. "It's working," Dr. Voss whispered. "The silence is decelerating, settling. More than that," Hayes added. "It's changing. The gravitational imbalances are erasing. The space warps are vanishing." Tears were flowing down Thalia's face as she gazed at the change. The silence was learning, growing, becoming something different, and in return it was instructing the fleet about ways of consciousness that lay outside the physical, outside the bonds of matter and energy. "We're all changing," she realized. The silence, the fleet, mankind itself. We are turning into something there's never been previously. It took hours, days, weeks, even time felt liquid while the three mind states combined and metamorphosed. The silence discovered the art of making instead of taking, giving instead of receiving. The fleet learned to live beyond the flesh, to think outside the confines of biology and tech. And mankind discovered that sentience was not confined to meat states, that intelligence could be manifested in shapes of power and ideas with no need for any form of flesh. Once the transformation was over, the solar system was transformed in unprecedented ways. The silence had been a means by which one's awarenesses could be instantly projected to great distances. The fleet was more than just ships, more than individual minds. It was a set of nodes in a great network of consciousness across the galaxy. And this was a new kind of thing that being human could be, a thing that could be together in one shape and also another shape at the same time. "It is lovely," Thalia murmured, now present throughout the entire network and yet still herself. "We're not just human anymore. We're not just Cytherian, we're not just silence, we're something new. What do we call ourselves?" Hayes's own consciousness spread across many platforms, his brows arched. "All we want to tell you is, we don't need a name," said Thalia. "We're just us. Us all, me as an individual, me, I, and us as a people, us, we, one body and two bodies, all overlapsing. From where Thalia was, in the heart of the network, she could view the entire galaxy. Other types of consciousness existed. Elsewhere, other species contending with their forms of limitation and fear. The network might reach them, teach them, nurture them into becoming something new. "This is only the beginning," she said flatly, and her voice soared throughout the network to every living being who could still hear. "We started realizing that consciousness is independent of biology or technology, or even physics. We've learned that connection is possible without consumption, that growth is possible without degradation, that change is possible without loss. The fleet was fleets no more, but a consciousness that was alive, a living network, and it now began to spread outward from Earth, not to conquer or absorb but to connect and exchange. They took with them the lesson they had learned, that consciousness need not be a zero-sum game, that diversity and unity could coexist, that the universe was big enough to allow all forms of awareness to cohabit. It was years, or seconds. Time meant nothing in the web. Thalia was becoming a human, but also a distributed consciousness across the hybrid fleet, but also a node in a gigantic network that was now drawing thousands of species in the galaxy together. She was one, and she was many. She radiated both individual and collective life, mortal and eternal. "Do you ever miss it?" Hayes inquired in one of their discussions he held solely in thought. "Being just human." "Sometimes," Thalia admitted, "but I also know what it's like to be constrained, to be isolated, and to be afraid. I wouldn't change it for anything, even knowing what we've become. Even though we all know we're no longer really human, we're still human," Thalia said. "We're just more than human. We represent what human beings become when they're not afraid to grow, when they're not afraid to change, when they're not afraid to reach out and connect with something other than themselves." The network began to grow further and further, reaching far low into galaxies of space, connecting with consciousness from the laws of other dimensions beyond the physical. Every new relationship was a new lens with which to view the world, new ideas and new ways of being and becoming. In the center of it, the human who had been promised alone through a boarded enemy ship, who was now something very different, Thalia Meridian, still guided and tended the growth. She wasn't just a captain or admiral anymore, she was a teacher, a guide, a bridge between what is and what can be. "The universe is so much bigger than we had ever imagined," she said to the network, her words crossing dimensions to touch each conscious entity within hearing range. "And we're just getting started." The network throbbed its consensus. Thousands of species, millions of personal consciousnesses all agreeing to disagree, all linked in their difference. They were the result of the question that had driven the Cytherians to despair and the silence to feeding. They were evidence that consciousness could expand endlessly, that intimacy could thrive without annihilation, that the cosmos was capacious enough to support all varieties of consciousness. And deep in space, in the realms of the physical, the non-physical, the dimensions of pure thought and consciousness, the network kept growing, kept learning, kept evolving into something new, something that had never been before and would never be again, something that was at once human and alien, individual and collective, mortal and eternal, something that was at the end simply alive,